A flooded home or business is never easy to deal with. The memories that are lost that you cannot replace. And Aquadam can be another tool in your arsenal to protect your home or business from the hurricane storm surge or the king tides. Look us up online at aquadam.net or give Aquadam a call at 707-764-2119. We can help.
Consider advertising on the Opperman Report. We have excellent advertising rates for you. The advertising rates are very affordable. Once your ad goes up and we play the show on the podcast and on the YouTube channel, those ads stay up there forever. And then we play repeats every single night of classic Opperman Report shows. And your new ads will be inserted into those repeats that play every single night. So the saturation is incredible, and the rates are very affordable. Contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com, or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Contact KMD Law. Emailrevealer.com. Go to emailrevealer.com. We handle adoption investigations, infidelity investigations, email tracing, locate or identify somebody from as little as an anonymous email address. Someone owe you money? Back child support? We can find that deadbeat and even assist you in obtaining a judgment and recover that judgment for you. Emailrevealer.com. Digital forensics, computer forensics, cell phone forensics, recover deleted text messages. Create a report that you can use in court. Emailrevealer.com, 800-572-9762. Hey guys, if you like the show and you want to show your support, check out the Opperman Report Patreon. We have all the shows that you hear Monday through Friday on AM/FM radio, but we cut out the ads, so you can hear that content ad-free. The Opperman Report Patreon, you should stop there once a day and check out what's going on over there. That's Opperman Report Patreon.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. If you just email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like the show, be sure and check out our Patreon. A lot of new content. I should have had the Patreon pulled up. Maybe I'll pull it up later on in the show, because there's a couple of brand new ones up there that aren't available yet. Let's see. Oh, yeah, the Keith Harmon Snow interview, Genocide, War, and the Powers that Profit from It. Katie Skip. Oh, that's the woman, the Florida woman that has that alligator in her house. Then the show we did about the real facts about Christopher Dorner, the cop killer cop. We got a bunch of good stuff in my interview with Brace Belden from TrueAnon. Our second interview with Pete Charette, the DEA agent, where he talks about the largest cocaine arrest made in the country. And it's a really fascinating story because the guy behind the whole thing later on claimed he was a CIA. And it was the CIA that helped bust him out of prison. But if you notice, every time I've ever asked Mr. Charette about the CIA being involved in coke smuggling, he just poo-poos it. Like it's just like a ridiculous story. But I gotta tell you, you can take that one with a grain of salt. Okay, and Casey Gain, Al Sharpton, and the CIA, Stormy Daniels, the death of Judge Melanie Tobiasen, the trials of Walter O'Grad, the shocking murder, so-called confessions, and notorious snitch that sent the man to death row. That's going to be playing this week on AM/FM radio, and so is The Worst Interests of the Child, the trafficking of children and parents through U.S. family courts. So keep an eye out for those shows. Now you can find, we're no longer on YouTube, so please stop asking me about YouTube. Okay, you got to do me a favor. All right? You can find the show on Spreaker, iHeart, Podcast, all those podcast catchers. I'm on every single one possible. And if you go to Spreaker.com and sign up there for free, there's a chat room, and you got an email notification when I put up new content. And, of course, I do this live show Friday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So check all that out. Now, I got a lot of content for you tonight, so I'm hoping we can get to all of it. Okay? A new Hulu 3-part documentary series came out about Larry Ray. And it's called Stolen Youth, the story of the Sarah Lawrence cult, sex cult, whatever they call it. Now, I first told you about that, and the documentary is okay, all right? It's 3 hours, 3 one-hour episodes. I think they could have did it in 90 minutes. And there's a lot of mood music. You know, I always, my ears perk up when I'm watching a documentary and they're playing music that makes me want to feel sympathetic for someone or feel nervous, you know. And why do they need to do that? If you're just presenting them with the facts, you don't need to add music to elicit certain emotions out of me. That's not. I don't think that's really good reporting. You know, when you read in the New York Times, you know, they don't play music. You know, okay. So I always my ears perk up when I start hearing it, where they're trying to manipulate my emotions. And in this documentary, this 3-part series, the focus is on the damage done to these young adults, these young college students. Now, when I first reported on this story back in May of 2019, and I replayed that today, and it's interesting, it was the first radio show about this topic, about the Larry Ray. It was in May 2019, and the second half of the show, I'm talking about the Jerry Falwell Jr. and the pool boy story. And that was even too early to talk about out in public. I knew the story, okay? But you couldn't. I didn't want to get sued. So I didn't want to talk about it. You know, I was dropping hints, and I was taking a little bit of clues from here and there, and I was taping them together for you. But I couldn't come right out and say it. Hey, man, everybody knows Jerry Falwell's his wife is sleeping with this pool boy. They bought him a hotel, a hostel down there in Miami full of drug dealers and prostitutes and gay prostitutes and stuff down there. And that then he was being blackmailed, and Roy Cohn got him out of it, and then he endorsed Trump. That's what happened. Okay, I couldn't say it at the time. Now everybody knows what happened, but, you know. Anyway. So it was around May 2019 when I stumbled upon this Larry Ray story. And the story, how it goes is, how it goes, the official story in the media back in 2019 is that this dad just got out of prison, okay, for some stock fraud. And he went to live with his daughter at Sarah Lawrence in the dorms. And there was a bunch of girls in there, you know, and he took over the house and he manipulated everybody. And ultimately, he got them involved in prostitution. And he claimed that they owed him money. But when we hear the story, it's a lot more than that. Okay, it's a lot more than that. So I heard that story, and I told you that story in May 2019. Then I saw an article that mentioned A.J. Weberman. Because Larry Ray was a source of information for A.J. Weberman when he wrote the book Homo Thug, The Secret Life of Rudy Giuliani. In that book, he makes a lot of allegations about Rudy Giuliani and his sexuality and Rudy Giuliani's lifetime friendship with this priest who's on his payroll that's been accused of pedophilia, okay? Publicly accused. This isn't a private allegation. Now, I've known A.J. Weberman since I was 17 years old. And in this article, they describe him as a conspiracy theorist, A.J. Weberman. Okay? Now, A.J. Weberman, he was one of the hippies. He wrote the book Coup d'etat in America, He was sued by the Watergate burglars. He sued them back, deposed. I think it was E. Howard Hunt he deposed. He knows everybody around the JFK assassination, Marita Lorenz. He knows these people. He testified before the Portuguese parliament recently because of an assassination that took place in Portugal involving Frank Sturgis. Okay? So AJ is a fairly reliable source, and he wrote this book about Homo Thug, The Secret Life of Rudy Giuliani. And at the time that book came out, he undercame a lot of attack, and I think at one point they pulled all of his books down from Amazon. Okay? Every single book he's ever written got pulled down, not just one or two. Now, AJ was also, too, he was the head of the Jewish Defense Organization, which was a more militant Jewish defense group than the Jewish Defense League that was led by Meir Kahane. It's more well-known, but they were more militant. So AJ found this Lawrence Ray as a source of information about Rudy Giuliani and Bernie Kerick. So when I saw AJ's name come up in all this, I called him up, and I didn't call him up, I sent him an email, and he sent me back Larry Ray's phone number, okay? So I guess it was about a week or two later that I finally get Larry Ray on the phone. And we had a long conversation. I couldn't get him off the phone. Now, when you read these articles and you watch this documentary, you get the impression that this is an overbearing, obnoxious, manipulative person you're talking to. And none of that is true. He came off very credible, and he came off he makes a good case that all of his troubles are due to the information that he released about Bernie Kerick. Okay? I've talked to a lot of people who try to manipulate you and flatter you and impress you, and none of that went on here with Mr. Ray, in my conversation with him. Now, and it's kind of funny, too, because I was going to go back and revisit the story, about a month later and tell you about my conversation with Larry Ray. I think I might have. Maybe I must have mentioned it over the years. But what happened next is that Epstein got arrested and Epstein died. All that stuff happened. And then I was allowed to talk about my participation in the Katie Dole lawsuit. And so then that kind of just wiped this out on the back burner. Okay? So who is Larry Ray? It turns out that this guy was some kind of CIA. He claimed to be a Marine and have a military background. But all they can come up with when they call around, the Marine says, no, he was never a Marine, and that he spent a short period of time in the Air Force. But there's a lot of pictures of him around military people, okay? And then also, too, he was involved in arranging a trip for Gorbachev to come to New York and meet with Rudy Giuliani. And he was, in his own personal car, he was Gorbachev's security. Okay? He describes going to Russia to make contact with Felix Sater from Trump fame. Okay? Felix Sater with all that shenanigans he was up to, with the stock fraud and all that kind of stuff. By the way, Felix Sater was an unindicted co-conspirator in the case that put Larry Ray in prison. Okay? And in that case that put Larry Ray in prison, he was first an informant, but then he got caught up in 19 indictments, okay, and with 19 defendants. He was one of the 19. He gets probation on that case. He gets into a fight with his girlfriend. Police show up, but she drops the charges. She doesn't pursue charges against him. But the court decides, well, that's a violation of your probation. So we're going to declare you a fugitive. When they go to pick, and a lot of effort went to pick him up. Because what they did was they were actually pinging his cell phone to find his location. Okay? So a lot of work went into finding this guy. The charges were that on behalf of some organized crime figures, he offered to make a $100,000 bribe in this case, and 19 people get the jackpot on this one. When they come to arrest him, U.S. Marshals come to arrest him on that fugitive warrant, they break his arm during the arrest. So that's all heavy-handed stuff, man. It's heavy-handed when you got 5 years probation, all right, and over a little domestic violence, they're going to revoke your probation, send you to prison, and then to go to all this effort to find you, that they're pinging your cell phone, okay, and then when they do find you, they break your arm. There's a lot of stuff there, guys. Who is Larry Ray? Okay, he says he was ex-CIA, all right, and the press doesn't say he's ex-CIA because it's a crime to say someone to out an active CIA agent. So no one comes right out and says this guy was CIA, except for him. He also describes how he, on behalf of NATO, he traveled to Russia to arrange a ceasefire in Kosovo. Now, you say, well, this guy's crazy. He's just making this stuff up. But he has a letter from NATO, okay? Now, I heard he had this letter from NATO. He told me he had a letter from NATO. I said, okay, he got a letter from NATO. Anyway, we can print the letter from NATO. But since then, they've contacted the guy who wrote the letter, Chris Donnelly, the NATO official, okay, who wrote the letter. And he comes out, he says, yeah, he was connected and he made some phone calls. He was around. Okay. What a lot of other people did at the time. I wrote a letter for anyone who was involved. Okay. Oh, my God. So, okay. They try to play this guy down like he's nobody, but clearly he's somebody. He also mentions, too, that he was involved with getting Stinger missiles off the black market. Felix Sater makes the same exact claim, okay? And these two definitely knew each other. And he worked on Wall Street in the 80s, and he had a nightclub, he had a piece of a restaurant, all this kind of stuff, kind of shady type of organized crime stuff, right? This is all before Sarah Lawrence, by the way. Okay, this is all before Sarah Lawrence. Now, in 1995, Larry meets Bernie Kerick. And at the time, Bernie Kerick was a young cop who was Rudy Giuliani's driver. And then he got promoted to Department of Corrections, and then he became the director of the Department of Corrections, and then he became the police commissioner. And then he was going to become the head of Homeland Security. But right before he did, good old Larry Ray ratted him out to the press and all of his crimes and his shenanigans that he was up to. And Kerick ultimately wound up going to prison for tax evasion and false documents and obtaining loans and stuff like that. Now, one of the things that endeared Larry Ray to me and got him to open up is I shared with him some information, gossip, that I had heard about Bernie Kerick over the years from cops in NYPD. And that is that when he left the Department of Corrections, he stole, allegedly, okay, he took with him when he left, when he departed, some stuff, just like, how all these secret documents happen. They wind up in the back of your car somehow, right? And on discs and CDs and all over. But he wound up with this art and this furniture and all this stuff like that when he left the Department of Corrections, and it came into his possession. And a lot of people talk about this story. But Larry Ray's stuff, his allegations about Bernie Kerick were a lot more serious allegations. As a matter of fact, he didn't say this to me, but one of the things he says in the press, and by the way, I'm trying to get A.J. Weber to come on the show and talk about this, is that one of the reasons he believes that he's going through all these problems is because of information he has about 9/11, secrets he knows about 9/11. And if you know who Bernie Kerick is, he was the cop in charge. He was the New York City police commissioner during 9/11. Bernie Kerick also rented the War Room on January 6th. He paid that bill, $50,000, for that hotel room. I think he was reimbursed later on, but he laid the money out. So these are all very serious people we're talking about here. Okay, and just to write this off as some weirdo manipulator who started a sex cult at Sarah Lawrence, there's a lot more than that. Okay, people who knew Larry Ray said that way back in the 90s, it was common for Larry to offer sex with his girlfriend. He had a long-term girlfriend when he married to his wife, Teresa, and he would offer sex with his girlfriend to friends and business associates. And at least 2 associates of Larry described witnessing situations in which he felt some of the women Larry lived with were being offered up for sexual purposes. That was in the 90s. That was before he met Bernie Kerick. So that means when he met Bernie Kerick in 95, and Bernie Kerick says in this documentary himself, he goes into, they got him in like this shadowy kind of, like he's some kind of government witness or something. They got him in this like a dark room. This thing is so bizarre, this whole documentary. But Bernie Kerick says, oh yeah, we were friends. We were best friends. I'd see him in the morning. We'd go to the gym. I'd go to his house. He'd come to my house. I'd go to New Jersey. He'd come to New Jersey. I'd go into Manhattan. Best friends. He was the best man at Bernie Kerick's wedding. He paid for the wedding. He paid for $4,000 worth of furniture for Bernie Kerick. He got a Tiffany silver, diamond encrusted badge for Bernie Kerick. All these inappropriate gifts for Bernie Kerick. And what happened was, when Larry Ray was facing time on these charges, this $100,000 bribe, and by the way, too, even more to it than that, okay? Even more to it than that. Because he was acting as an FBI informant in that case with the other 19 defendants. At first, he was an FBI informant. When he met that FBI agent, his name was like Uher, U-H-E-R. He met that FBI agent through Bernie Kerick, and then they said, "Well, he's not a good informant. He's not a good rat." Okay, so he winds up catching charges in that case. Then Bernie Kerick introduces the same FBI agent that was Larry Ray's handler, Larry Ray the pimp, who was giving away his own girlfriends. Right? Kerick introduces that FBI agent to Donald Trump. He becomes Donald Trump's bodyguard. Okay. So now keep in mind, all this time that he's known Kerick, their friendship, from 1995 to 2010, when they're best friends, Larry Ray was giving away his girlfriends to business associates and friends. There's no way that Kerick didn't know this. No way. Because everyone else knew it. So let's see here. Where are we now? One of the things, by the way, when you watch this documentary, one of the things you see clearly is these kids are talking about, he was using Adderall, and he was advocating for amphetamines. You can see, or them living in this house together, you can see the effects of everyone in that house being on speed, being on amphetamines. You can see that there's a shared psychosis of everyone in that household. By the way, too, when he gets to Sarah Lawrence, he starts putting these kids through this Scientology-type therapy sessions to manipulate them and get them under his control. So, and he said he learned these techniques through the U.S. military, through the U.S. government programs. I got to tell you, man, I don't understand why more people are not jumping all over this story with all the shadiness going on here, with all this intelligence connections, NYPD connections. It's just, this is outrageous. Okay. Yeah, so like I said, when Larry was facing those charges, the $100,000 bribe, he went to Kerick and said, "Hey, can you call the head of the FBI and pull your dogs off?" And Kerick said he wouldn't do it. So Larry got revenge against Kerick when Kerick was being appointed to the Homeland Security. He ratted him out to the press and told all the stuff he knew about Kerick, and not paying his housekeeper, off the books. But obviously there was more to it than that. So now get this. When Ray shows up down there at Sarah Lawrence and he moves in with these kids, some of the parents of the kids went to the dean of students and complained and says, hey, man, can you do something about this guy? We're hearing all these crazy stories. And the dean of students, a fellow named Green, says, well, I really can't do anything. If a father wants to visit his kid in the dorm, we can't stop them. Now, I know now you can't do that. After COVID, you couldn't even go and visit. But I guess at that time you could. But they didn't always stay at this dorm, though. They went to off-student housing, and then they rented an apartment on 93rd Street, right around the corner from AJ, from this fellow named Chen. Chen tells Ray, you can stay on my couch in my apartment on 93rd Street. But instead, Ray starts bringing in all these students, and 24 hours, the place becomes a mess. He starts doing crazy renovations, taking doorknobs off and doors off of, just crazy stuff all the time. Because he's on speed 24 hours a day. They're speeding out this whole bunch, all of them. And by the way, too, all these kids you see on these shows here, on this documentary, complaining about the way they're mistreated, they never complain about getting all the speed. Okay, they never once said, oh boy, I hated the speed. No. And you could tell they were all tweaking out, this whole bunch. There's one scene where this girl's pulling her hair out. It's just brutal to watch. Keep in mind, too, okay, everything you see in this documentary, Ray taped all that stuff. He taped himself doing all that. He taped these kids giving confessions. He suspected or believed in his head, his methamphetamine psychosis or whatever, that Bernie Kerick had put these kids up to poison him with mercury and all kinds of stuff, an whole elaborate theory of him being poisoned. I guess they weren't poisoned in the meth, right? And too, the kids say that, he had a lock on the refrigerator to prevent us from eating. But then the other thing was, he thought it was being poisoned, so they locked up the refrigerator. So there's a lot more. Oh, and another thing too. When I was brushing up on this story, I come across this child custody evaluation. They did a psychological examination of Larry Ray during his custody case. And what his theory is in 2004, when he was having custody problems with his wife and domestic violence problems with his wife, that Bernie Kerick and Giuliani and even people like Dick Cheney and Bush befriended his wife to take him down, okay? So he's fighting for custody. And at one point, he got full custody because he accused his wife of Child Protective Services came involved, and he was given full custody. But they do a custody evaluation where they declare that Larry Ray is so manipulative on such an incredible AJ's still alive. Yeah, AJ's alive. He had COVID, but he's doing well. This guy is such a liar and such a manipulative a sociopath, blah, 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 that no forensic psychologist could even dare to withstand his manipulative techniques. Okay, they can't even write a report. But I strongly advise that he doesn't get the case. The March gets the case. Okay, a couple of things now. So when I read that, I'm thinking first, I said, but did this guy manipulate me? Is that why I'm giving this guy? Because he had a credible story that Kerick was behind all this. Was I manipulated? Well, it didn't appear to be manipulative to me. I've interrogated a lot of people. I've interviewed a lot of people. And in front of you, I've interviewed a lot of people. I'm pretty good at that. I didn't get any of those telltale signs of someone trying to manipulate me or lie to me or talk in circles or any of that. Okay? I didn't get the impression that this was a crazy guy. This was a calm guy, a very confident guy. Okay, so, well, I must have fallen for this custody evaluation report that says he's so manipulative. But then I start thinking, How the hell did they get that report? Do you know? Okay, that's a HIPAA violation. That's a Privacy Act violation. If they got it from his wife's lawyer, he can get disbarred for that. You're not even allowed to take that home. You can only review that in your lawyer's office or in the judge's office. Okay, you can't take that home with you. How is there a copy of this thing floating around? It would either have to be Ray's lawyer, the judge, right, or the wife's lawyer. Someone leaked this document, because there's no situation where they'll print this out and give it to you and let you take it home, and then, okay, that's how it got into the wrong hands. So just that alone is so fishy that that Hulu has the balls to put this on in the doc and show a picture of it. What the hell's going on here? That's something. No fear, you know. So there's that. Okay. Yeah, he himself, he admitted using amphetamines, okay? And had a long, decorated history as a government agent. His former work as an international CIA operative. He recovered Stinger missiles off the black market, engineered a ceasefire in Kosovo. All this stuff, man. Now, another thing, too, I was mentioning to you before, that when I was talking to Ray, he kept saying, I have everything documented. I have everything documented. I have everything documented. And it turns out from watching this film, he did. He recorded everything. He recorded everything, and he had the people he suspected of poisoning him. He had them do confessions on camera, on video, signed confessions. Now, and he mentioned that to me, too. He says, I have everything documented. They confessed, right? And he put all this up on a website. At one point, now see, the point I'm trying to make here is he wasn't hiding. He's the one documenting everything. And then at one point, one of the girls, Claudia, this disgruntled roommate had left the group early on, and she was spreading around a lot of negative comments about Larry and the family or whatever, and the kids and stuff. And so he had one of the other girls who was loyal to him write an email, an open letter email to the dean of students and 20 other students on that floor in that dormitory, outlining everything that was going on in the house. So it's not like this guy was hiding. It's not like this guy was, I don't want to get caught. He's out there pushing all this stuff out there. He had even created websites about all this, about how Bernie Kerick was taking him down, was trying to destroy his life. And what happened? His life has been destroyed, right? Now, he has a history. I'm not saying he's a good guy, because he has a history, once again, of pimping out his girlfriends, the business associates, and all that kind of stuff, right? And that's ultimately what happened with one of these young ladies he'd met at Sarah Lawrence. Now, wait till you hear this, okay? Because we're talking about, he's pimping this girl out on a website, $8,000 a day. $2,600 for 2 hours. I think it was $2,600 for 4 hours or something like that. So you look at the pictures, and there's nothing special about this kid. He's a regular looking person, right? I think there was some dominatrix involved too. But the thing is, on some, what's this guy, search engine optimization genius that he got all these clients to come in and pay that kind of money? These had to be clients that he knew. These had to be high rollers that he knew he was pimping his girl out, and you could see the money. Another thing, too, this guy has $28 million worth of domain names. He pulled out his laptop and opened up a spreadsheet. He said listed total estimated valuation of his 8,867 domain names on GoDaddy. It was more than $28 million. Now, by the way, until this documentary came out, I had no idea that Larry Ray had gotten arrested. I had no idea that he'd gotten convicted. I had no idea that he's spending 60 years in prison with no possibility of parole. And all that skipped my attention. Okay, maybe someone else noticed it. I sure did not. Before he gets arrested, okay, and even this is like while all this is going on, Mr. Chen, who invited him to the 93rd Street apartment to sleep on his couch, I guess as a roommate, and finally he got chased out of his own place. In 2014, he gets fed up. He's going to evict Larry Ray. Now, Larry Ray says, well, no, I'm taking this to trial. Now, somehow, in landlord-tenant court, he goes into this whole thing on the court record when they're interviewing these young girls. When did you first meet Larry Ray? And they go into the whole story about Giuliani and Kerick and all this stuff. This is before he's arrested. Okay? He's not making, none of this is a secret for Larry Ray. He's coming out and telling the world what's really behind his persecution and his arrest. Okay? That somehow he knows dirt on Giuliani. He knows dirt on Kerick. He gave some of that dirt to A.J. Webman, who wrote the book and then got his whole Amazon thing shut down. There was another person A.J. was reporting on that also was an attorney. I don't know the specific details, but I know it was rolling around the same time. And I know that he had a lot of problems over this Larry Ray, this book about Giuliani, Homo Thug. Okay? But in 2014, this whole case was laid out in, by the way, too, how they got a judge to allow this in there. It's pretty simple, man. Hey, did you damage your apartment? Why do you want to believe you're not paying the rent? The landlord-tenant court is really short. Okay? It's very informal. So how they got to put on a whole case like this with the witnesses talking about Giuliani and Kerick, the whole thing is just crazy. The whole thing is just crazy. And I told you they tracked him down to that apartment by pinging the cell phone. Now, what's the year they did that? Because that would have had to been, that would be before. No, they would have to ping the cell phone before the trial, but they would have had to know where he lived on 93rd Street there. Then why would they have to ping the cell phone? Now, the people who lived with him, okay, and he met them when they were young, okay, they were like all under 19, except for his daughter was like the oldest one. She was 19. The rest were all under 19. But some of these people were in his life for 10 years. Some of these people were in his life until the day he was arrested. And the one, like that girl who was escorting herself out, $8,000 a night. Also, too, this didn't all happen in Sarah Lawrence, too. They had a place in North Carolina. They had a place in Jersey where they all moved around and lived together. This isn't all Sarah Lawrence. It initiated in Sarah Lawrence. The dean of Sarah Lawrence was getting complaints. They allowed this to continue. Who would have the political juice to allow this to continue? People like Giuliani and Kerick. Okay? There's an allegation that some of these kids knew Kerick, and they were threatened by Kerick and Giuliani out in California and stuff. Now, some of these kids, you look at their life, and they say, oh, yeah, my parents knew Kerick, and they get a free ride of college, multiple colleges, that wound them up there at Sarah Lawrence. There's you got to have, with all this stuff, man, with the CIA, NATO, Felix Sater, characters like Giuliani and Kerick and Dick Cheney involved, all these kind of names, the prostitution, the sex trafficking here, $8,000 a night. It's not so far-fetched to say that they wouldn't groom some agent to put in there to poison Larry Ray and to poison his daughter and a daughter's friend, and that these other people were put in there. And it's the people that are all being accused of the poisoning that are in this Hulu documentary, Now, you can't dismiss Larry Ray's version of events. I can't. And even after they tell me, oh, well, you've been manipulated by this. Look at this psychiatric evaluation, Ed. You're just a silly goose. You've been manipulated by this man. I don't know, man. I talked to the guy. I didn't read the psychiatric evaluation except the part that they put on TV in violation of the HIPAA Act and the Privacy Act. You know? So now, also, get this now. A lot of these kids, I mean, they were damaged. They were all on meth. They were all on, not meth, whatever, some kind of amphetamines that they were on. Tweaking out all over the place. There's this one scene where this boy is complaining about the girl. By the way, there were boys involved in this too. This wasn't all girls. In the original story, I assumed they were all girls at Sarah Lawrence, okay, and that this wasn't a co-ed situation. One of the boys is slapping himself in the face and punching himself because the girl was making noise and getting off the couch. And every time she would do this, he would hit himself. And Ray's filming all this. And for the most part, he's pretty calm. I mean, sometimes there's some real serious scenes where he's abusing the kids with the pliers and stuff, you know. But then again, I don't know. Almost everyone involved in this, the students, attempted suicide. Okay? They all had suicide attempts. Now, somehow Larry Ray, who appears to have nothing to hide, is able to position himself in the hospital. One of these students claimed that he was reviewing their lab results and their medical charts and advising the doctors and the staff how to treat her. Okay? Now, that sounds far-fetched, right? But what we do know in both instances, he was able to go into the hospital and prevent the parents from seeing their own sons and daughters. He was allowed to see them, but the parents were not. He was running interference between the parents and their kids. Now, how do you pull that off? If you're an ex-con who's a con man and a cult leader and manipulating people, and you're on meth 24 hours a day, you got to have some kind of connections to pull something like that off. Now, he no longer had the connections of the police commissioner and the head of the Department of Corrections, and who knows what his relationship with Giuliani was at the time, but he does seem to know like a lot of generals, a lot of rich, powerful people in New York, and supposedly would be sitting around saying, well, I got to fly to Russia next week, I'll be right back, you know? To these other wealthy businessmen who are corroborating all this. And he's been pimping out his girlfriends his whole life while he was best friends with Kerick. So this whole it would be great. I don't see why something like this doesn't get the same amount of attention as Epstein does. Because it's the same crew of people, you know, the same buddies. You know, Giuliani was Epstein's attorney with Tower Financial. Right? Trump and Epstein were co-defendants in that lawsuit. Why doesn't this get... People who love to complain about Epstein also love to complain about the FBI. And, oh, Epstein was an FBI informant too. Well, so was Larry Ray. He did all the same things. Larry Ray's got $28 million worth of GoDaddy stuff. He's driving around in limousines. There's just so much here. I tell you, what I see here with this Hulu documentary is the official story, you know? And they're giving us to us here with the music, feel sorry for these kids, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And it just appears to me it's the official story. It's a whitewash, and it's a cover-up of probably one of the biggest stories out there, man. This guy was definitely some kind of intel, working for NATO, working for the FBI, okay, and pimping out these kids and feeding them amphetamines and living in a dorm at Sarah Lawrence at one point. With nobody raising an objection, you know, they're separating kids from their parents, you know. But definitely what you're seeing here. Anyway, we'll try and get AJ to come on the show and see what he can fill us in with too, man. But I definitely, if you can find that book, Homo Thug, by Giuliani, man, I definitely recommend that. I recommend all AJ's books, man. Jerry did it with this fellow in the who was involved in the JFK assassination too. And that's a great book. I did an interview with him about that. I think it's in Patreon though. I don't think it's out there in the public. I should just put it out there and see what's going on. Okay, so keep an eye out for some really good shows coming up. One will be The Trials of Walter O'Grad, The Shocking Murder, So-Called Confessions, and Notorious Snitch that sent the man to death row. The fellow who I interviewed here is Thomas Lowenstein. And let me tell you something, man. This guy is a great guest. And he's doing a lot of work with the Innocence Project and projects like that. So I told him, listen, man, whatever you got, you want to come on here and bring up stories that we can shed light onto, let's do that. And then the worst interests of the child, the trafficking of children and parents through U.S. family courts. That's Keith Harmon Snow, who's also like an international, he worked for the UN at one point, and an international advocate and war correspondent and against genocide. We get into the whole story about Rwanda, too, that we've talked about on here with Casey Gain-Magala, about how the official story that we see in Hotel Rwanda with Don Cheadle and all this stuff is really hogwash and pretty much the exact opposite of what actually went down there. So we have those two guests there. Pretty good stuff. You might also want to take a look at the show I did about the World Wildlife Fund and how they're a cover for mercenaries and intelligence operations, too. We can find that, too, in the Spreaker archives. Okay, working on a lot of stuff, guys, and I'm working on this big story. It's not my story. It's someone else's story. But I'm helping out as much as I can in the background. And, it's a huge story. And it would probably unseat a sitting congressman and, maybe even more serious ramifications after that. But then I started thinking, who really cares? Is it going to change a damn thing? Just because I don't like this guy, because his politics differ from mine. Is it going to make, first of all, they're all capitalists anyway. Is it going to make any bit of a difference? His district is so gerrymandered, another Republican, maybe worse, will come in, So I'm starting to reevaluate things. I put so much time and effort and energy into these things behind the scenes. And, I was just spinning my wheels. And there's just so much crap. So there's that. What else is going on? We shot down another balloon, huh? Man, and then there's, we're playing this originally Friday night, 8 p.m. live on Spreaker. And Russia also, too, has sent 100 missiles into Ukraine. So we got hot, we're shooting down stuff, enemy, aerial, devices over our own country here. When is the last time we've been this crazy? And you got the State of the Union, they're yelling at all this craziness. By the way, I'm having David Wheeler come back with an update on his lawsuit against Lauren Boebert. And also, too, we're going to tape a second part, too, about George Santos, who's another one dancing between the raindrops. Well, I did an interview with the CAN Project, Shane McKay, and his friend Chris Sinead, a couple of Irish guys. And we talked about opposition research. We talked about George Santos. Talked about a lot of good stuff, man. So keep an eye out for that coming up. You can find it on my Twitter. By the way, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Opperman Report. And TikTok is at Opperman. But we have an Opperman Report one there, too, we're going to be putting up as well. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So David Wheeler from American Muckrakers came out with all that information. He came on our show. We were the first guy to put this guy on about how Lauren Boebert was an unlicensed escort. She was involved in her husband with the public exposure and indecency to a minor. How he gets paid all this money from the oil industry as a consultant, doesn't know a damn thing about oil. And when he made the allegations, or the accusations that she was an unpaid escort, she said, I'm suing him, and I'm suing anybody that donates to him. Because he's lying, he made all this up. Well, she never sued. But guess what? He sued. He sued, but they said, well, the jurisdiction is incorrect. You have to sue in Colorado. So he found a lawyer in Colorado. They're trying to raise money now. AmericanMuckrakers.com. It's just a little bit of money they need to get Lauren Boebert into a deposition, okay, where they can videotape it and get her deposed on all this stuff. They can ask her about January 6th. They can ask her about a lot of stuff because she said she was defamed. She said she was going to sue. She's not suing. She got sued. Okay, but now they just need some money for the deposition. So if you want to go to American Muckrakers and donate a couple of bucks, we'll try and get that off the ground. That would be nice. So I'm taping back again with him about George Santos. We're going to be putting in there. He has some new information about Maddie Cawthorn, too. Madison Cawthorn, that's a young man who made those allegations about being invited to sex parties in D.C. and then suddenly all his own skeletons in his closet came all closeting out. Came out of the closet. Although I don't think he's not out of the closet. I think he's still in the closet. So we got that there too coming up. Let's see what else. What else is going on in the world? Who cares? You know, I was supposed to go back to the Dali Museum this week. They had a poetry reading, and wouldn't you know it, man? I'm so disappointed. I couldn't find anyone to go with me. You know, I moved out here to Florida. I know hardly anyone. Came out here right before COVID. The whole state was locked down. And now here I got all this great stuff I could be doing. If I was back in Vegas, man, I could pick up the phone. 20 people would, or just post on Facebook. Hey, who wants to go? And 20 people, want to go. So what a difference in my life this is down here in Florida, man. It's just such a different way of life. For me, at least. Let's see. I guess I'm running out of things to say. Only got about 2 minutes. Joined some face group here. I better not talk about it. But let's see what else. I'm going to have to get Ed Parnell to cut out all the ums at the end here. I'll come up with some stuff and we'll add it later on. How's that? By the way, that's why, a lot of times, too, when I do these solo shows and we're short on time, and at the end of the show I said, okay, I'm going to end early, I'll come up with stories and I'll edit it later on. For instance, the Christopher Dorner story. We were short on that, and I threw in last week we were short, and I told a story about Christopher Dorner and the way the police raided his home in Rhodes Ranch in Las Vegas. Well, all this was going on in L.A., and he was shooting up cops over there in L.A. They knew he had a house in Henderson, in Nevada, at Rhodes Ranch. And they went to that house, and they shot it up with these huge, giant projectiles. And there was huge, giant bullet holes, and they crashed their car into his garage. And then they shut down the whole neighborhood. And when it was time they wouldn't let the people leave their homes. And then when it was time for the school bus to show up and drop kids off there, they took the kids holding rifles and ballistic armor and helmets and these green fatigues, and they walked the kids from the bus stop to their parents' homes when they knew damn well that Christopher Garner was not in that neighborhood, was not in that house. They had already started boarding up the house when they marched those kids around. So, I added that little tale last week. All right, guys, we're out of time. Thank you so much. Good night.
A flooded home or business is never easy to deal with. The memories that are lost that you cannot replace. And Aquadam can be another tool in your arsenal to protect your home or business from the hurricane storm surge or the king tides. Look us up online at aquadam.net or give Aquadam a call at 707-764-2119. We can help.
Consider advertising on the Opperman Report. We have excellent advertising rates for you. The advertising rates are very affordable. Once your ad goes up and we play the show on the podcast and on the YouTube channel, those ads stay up there forever. And then we play repeats every single night of classic Opperman Report shows. And your new ads will be inserted into those repeats that play every single night. So the saturation is incredible, and the rates are very affordable. Contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com, or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. It doesn't matter how imposing